Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I'm Dr. Mira, your virtual research supervisor, and let's just jump straight into it. Here is the reality. One data set can only show you part of the truth. Really strong research, well, it checks the exact same problem from more than one angle. So today we are tackling a massive challenge that every researcher faces: validating your research and making absolutely sure the data you're collecting is actually telling you the truth.
Picture this. You're sitting right here in my office. You pull up your research dashboard, you show me the results from one incredibly in-depth interview, and you proudly declare your core finding. Now, the very first thing I'm going to ask you is this: how do we know this finding is stable? It's a critical question, right? Because it forces us to confront the vulnerability of relying on a single source of evidence. Think about it. If all your conclusions are hanging on just one thread, what happens if that thread snaps?
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by diagnosing the single source problem. Then we'll explore data, methodological investigator, and theory triangulation. After that, we'll look at convergence and divergence. And finally, we'll wrap up with a practical triangulation checklist.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the single source problem. The fundamental reality of research is that one dataset simply only shows part of the truth. Every single method, whether it's an employee survey, an observational study, or a one-on-one interview, has inherent weaknesses. A survey, for instance, might give you incredible breadth, but completely lack depth. An interview might give you rich personal context, but then suffer from the respondent's selective memory. If you're relying on just one angle, it's like you're only seeing a shadow on the wall, not the actual object casting it. And that brings us to our core concept for today: triangulation. This basically means using different methods, data sources, researchers, or theories to examine the exact same research problem. Interestingly enough, the term actually originates from navigation and trigonometry, where you use multiple reference points to pinpoint an exact location. In the social sciences, researchers like Norman Denzin and Michael Quinn Patton formulated this concept to help us map our research findings with that exact same level of precision. It essentially reduces single-source bias and dramatically improves credibility.
Moving along to Section 2, Data Triangulation.
Data triangulation is really all about playing detective. It means collecting information from multiple, completely independent sources to corroborate the exact same finding. It's the hard investigative work of checking what people say against what documents actually show. Say you're investigating a project delay. Well, you wouldn't just interview the project manager, right? You'd pull the site records, you'd read through the meeting minutes, you'd check the program updates, and you would interview other stakeholders. You're gathering data from different people, different locations, and different time periods. To put that into perspective, let's look at Bobby Starnes' 1990 study. Instead of just interviewing one single group, Starnes pulled data from 4 distinct sources: the direct care staff, the administrative team, personal notes and journals, and official center records. By cross-referencing these multiple sources, her conclusions gained far more credibility than if she had been limited to just one perspective. She didn't just have an opinion, she had a deeply corroborated, rock-solid finding.
Next up is Section 3, Methodological Triangulation.
Let's look at the actual architecture of method triangulation using Creswell's mixed methods designs. There are 3 core approaches we can take here. First, in a convergent design, you collect quantitative and qualitative data at the exact same time, and then you merge the results to compare them. Second, in an explanatory sequential design, you start with quantitative data to spot the big trends, and then you follow up with qualitative data to explain exactly why those trends exist. And third, an exploratory sequential design just flips that. You explore qualitatively first to build a theory or an instrument, and then you test it out quantitatively. A really brilliant example of this in action is Vikstrom's 2003 study. She wanted to uncover occupational gender biases. So what did she do? She combined hard, quantitative data from population registers with a qualitative analysis of job advertisements. By merging these 2 entirely different methods, the hard numbers from the registers and the nuanced cultural context from the ads, she uncovered a much richer, way more accurate picture of gender bias than either method could have ever provided on its own.
Now let's shift gears to Section 4, Investigator and Theory Triangulation.
Look, the crucial point here is that we as researchers are human. We have blind spots. Investigator triangulation solves this by having multiple researchers collect, interpret, or code the exact same data. Imagine 2 researchers independently coding interview transcripts on their screens and then coming together to cross-check their interpretations. It's a great way to keep each other honest. On the other hand, theory triangulation means using more than one theoretical lens to interpret a single finding. For instance, you might look at employee technology adoption through both technology acceptance theory and institutional theory to see how the framing changes.
Norman Denzin really hit the nail on the head when he pointed out that multiple observers or interviewers are employed to reveal and minimize biases. Doing this ensures that the data isn't just telling us what we want to hear based on our own preconceived notions. It essentially forces us to be objective and rigorous. Which leads us right into Section 5, convergence and divergence. So, what actually happens when we sit down and start comparing all your sources? Well, generally two things can happen. The first is convergence. This is the absolute dream scenario where your survey data, your interviews, and your HR records all point toward the exact same conclusion. Boom, you mark that finding as strong and stable. But then there's divergence. This is when your evidence conflicts. Maybe the survey says morale is super high, but your interviews reveal deep underlying frustration. I see students panic all the time when they encounter divergence. But as your virtual supervisor, I'm telling you, take a deep breath, don't panic. Researchers Green and Maxwell reframe this brilliantly. They call it a dialectic stance. It's an engagement with differences in findings that forces you to completely re-examine your understanding. Disagreement in your data is actually incredibly useful. It absolutely doesn't mean your study failed. It just reveals the complexity, the nuances, and the boundary conditions of the real world. It adds so much depth to your findings.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 6, the triangulation checklist. I highly recommend keeping this checklist handy when you're going through your own dashboard. I want you to ask these questions of every major finding in your study. For method, which different methods support this finding? For data, which independent sources confirm it? For investigator, did more than one researcher review and code it? For theory, can another theoretical perspective explain it? And finally, for divergence, what does the conflicting evidence actually reveal about the complexity of the situation?
I want to leave you with this one final, really crucial thought. Triangulation does not only confirm findings, it helps researchers test, question, and strengthen their interpretation. Strong research doesn't shy away from complex data, it embraces it. By looking at a problem from multiple angles, you aren't just proving you're right, you're discovering the full, fascinating truth of the phenomenon. That concludes today's explainer. Now go look at your data from a totally new angle.